The first man who tried to follow Adrian Vale that night lost interest in him the moment I stepped into the street. I noticed because Adrian noticed. His hand closed around my elbow, not hard enough to hurt, just firm enough to remind me that for the next 6 hours I was supposed to be his harmless civilian boyfriend, not someone entitled to make decisions of my own. "Keep walking," he murmured, smiling for the benefit of anyone watching us from the cafe windows. I kept walking. Across the avenue, a man in a charcoal coat had been tracking Adrian's reflection in the glass of a parked sedan. Then his attention shifted to me. Not casually. Completely. Adrian changed direction without warning, steering us toward a crowded hotel entrance. The watcher ignored him and crossed the street after me. That was when Adrian's smile disappeared. That's not right. Coming from the head of one of the most secretive intelligence units in Washington, it sounded less like concern than an indictment of reality. I looked at him. Which contingency is this? He kept watching the revolving glass doors ahead. The one where you stop being funny. So, a new one. Under different circumstances, I might have enjoyed the irritation that flickered across his face. Adrian Vale was famous for not being surprised, which made the tension in his jaw considerably less reassuring. We entered the hotel with the evening crowd. Adrian guided me past the elevators, through a lounge, then toward a service corridor I hadn't known existed. He moved like every doorway had already been measured in his head. I moved because his fingers were still around my arm, and because somewhere behind us, the man in the charcoal coat had entered the lobby without looking once at Adrian. That bothered me more than being followed. For the last 3 days, Adrian had treated me like a decorative risk assessment. Stay close. Don't improvise. Don't touch anything that isn't yours. If someone speaks to you in the wrong language, smile and let me handle it. I had agreed because the assignment was supposed to be simple. Give Adrian a believable civilian relationship while he met a foreign intermediary who refused to speak near. Government personnel. I wasn't an operative. I worked in international cultural logistics, manifests, delayed freight, customs paperwork, and expensive art moving between people who thought borders were negotiable. My usefulness to Adrian was supposed to be ordinary. That was the point. He stopped at an unmarked door and pressed his thumb to a sensor concealed beneath the frame. Inside. I didn't move. His gaze finally landed on me. "Evan, you want me to walk into a locked room I didn't know existed because a stranger looked at me? I want you off the floor because he changed surveillance priority." The words were clinical, but the implication wasn't. From you to me. Adrian's silence confirmed it. Something old and unpleasant tightened beneath my ribs. I knew that silence. Teachers had used versions of it before making accommodations I hadn't asked for. Former partners had used it before explaining which decisions would be easier if they made them for me. Adrian had perfected the professional version, concern stripped of consultation. "Tell me what you saw," I said. "Inside." "That isn't an answer." His voice flattened. "You are not trained for this. Then explain it to the helpless civilian before you lock him in a room." The words caught him. For half a second, the spy chief looked less annoyed than exposed. Then his earpiece clicked. A woman's voice spoke too softly for me to hear, but Adrian's attention sharpened instantly. He opened the door, and this time didn't touch me. "The man outside abandoned his original track 37 seconds after you appeared. We had another observer at the south entrance. Same behavior." I stepped through the doorway more slowly. "2 people switched from you to me." "Yes." "Why?" "I don't know." Adrian Vale saying those 3 words felt more dangerous than the men following us. The room beyond was a compact security suite with 4 live camera feeds, a reinforced inner door, and a locked communications terminal. Adrian crossed to the screens. The charcoal-coated man was visible in the hotel lobby, standing beside a marble column with his phone lowered at his side. On another feed, a woman near the south entrance. "Watch the elevators." Neither was searching for Adrian. Both were waiting for me to reappear. Adrian touched his earpiece. "Abort the original meet. Pull Mercer's transport record, hotel access, and anything filed under the cover package. I want to know who saw his name." My stomach dropped. My name wasn't supposed to be in the operational package. Adrian turned toward me. That pause told me the balance between us had changed. Not enough to make me safer, just enough to make him uncertain. "It wasn't," he said. The terminal chimed before either of us could continue. Adrian looked down at the incoming security report, and whatever he saw removed the last trace of irritation from his face. He read it twice. What? I moved closer, but he angled the screen away on instinct. I almost laughed. Even now, even with 2 trained watchers waiting for me downstairs, his first reflex was still to decide what I was allowed to know. Then he seemed to realize it too. Slowly, he turned the monitor toward me. The report showed a flagged identity query attached to my civilian record. No agency header. No current operation timestamp. The first recorded search had been made 11 months earlier. Adrian stared at the date, then at me. Our cover assignment was approved 3 weeks ago. The room suddenly felt smaller. The men downstairs had not noticed me because I was standing beside Adrian Vale. Someone had been looking for me long before the spy chief ever decided I was harmless enough to use as his cover. Adrian did not send me home. That was the first consequence of the report, and somehow it felt more personal than the 2 strangers waiting downstairs. Within 8 minutes, my phone was sealed in an evidence pouch, my hotel reservation was canceled, and a black government sedan was taking us toward a location Adrian refused to name. I sat beside him in the back seat, watching the city flatten into glass and headlights while he worked through 3 secure calls without once looking at me. Then his analyst sent the second report. Adrian read it, paused, and passed me the tablet without being asked. That alone told me something had changed. The 11-month-old query had not been a one-time search. Someone had checked my name 6 times across 3 different civilian systems, customs records, a museum shipping database, and a private medical insurer I had stopped using years ago. None of them had anything to do with Adrian, his agency, or the cover operation. They weren't following your work, I said. They were following mine. Adrian's mouth tightened. Not exactly. He enlarged a list of dates. 3 of the searches lined up with overseas exhibitions I had helped coordinate. Another happened 2 days after I changed apartments. The last was made the morning after I renewed my passport. The pattern was not professional enough to look random and not clean enough to feel like government surveillance. It felt worse than that. Personal. Patient. How much of my life is in your systems? I asked. Enough to protect you. That wasn't what I asked. His attention settled on me. More than you'd like. And apparently less than someone else has. The car slowed near a red light. Adrian's gaze shifted past me toward the window, and the change in his posture was immediate. Don't turn around. I almost did anyway. His hand settled lightly against my knee, not intimate, just anchoring me in place beneath the line of the window. Blue SUV, 2 cars back. It's been with us since DuPont. One of yours? No, the light changed. Our driver took the next turn too fast, then another. The SUV stayed with us for less than a minute before peeling away. Adrian touched his earpiece. Switch destination. No standard site. He ended the call and exhaled through his nose. They anticipated the transport. Because they know your protocol? Maybe. He did not sound convinced. That bothered me more than the SUV. 20 minutes later, we entered a narrow apartment above a closed tailor shop in Georgetown, the kind of place no one would associate with government work unless they knew exactly what to look for. Adrian checked every room himself. I watched him test the windows, the hallway camera, even the vent above the stove. You always do this. When someone is actively tracking a civilian under my protection. That answer sounded rehearsed. It wasn't comforting. He glanced over his shoulder. You use humor when you're angry. You use procedure when you're scared. That stopped him. Not dramatically, just enough. His attention sharpened as if I had said something operationally relevant. I'm not scared. Then which contingency is this? His expression nearly softened before the secure tablet chimed again. Adrian opened the message, and whatever trace of humor had almost appeared vanished. What now? I asked. He hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. A still image filled the display. It showed me standing outside a coffee shop near my office 3 months earlier, holding a paper cup and looking down at my phone. I remembered the morning because I had spilled half the coffee on my sleeve before a donor meeting. The photograph had been taken from across the street. Beneath it was a timestamp and a location tag. There were 4 more images. Me entering a freight terminal. Me leaving a grocery store. Me unlocking the front door of my old apartment. The last one made my stomach tighten. I was crouched beside my bicycle, talking to Mrs. Keller from the 3rd floor while she held her little terrier under one arm. That dog died in January, I said quietly. Adrian looked at the timestamp. These were collected before the cover assignment. I know. Evan. His voice changed when he said my name. Less command. More attention. Think carefully. Did anyone ever approach you during those trips? Ask unusual questions? Pretend to recognize you. I started to say no, then stopped. A memory surfaced, small enough that I had never given it weight. A man at a reception in Prague, maybe 8 months ago. Older, gray-haired, polite. He had asked whether I still handled private estate transfers. I had assumed he was confusing me with someone else. There was someone, I said. Adrian sat across from me, instead of standing over me. Tell me. So I did. Not because he ordered me to, but because he was listening like my memory might matter more than his assumptions. When I finished, Adrian sent the description to his team. The reply came back almost immediately. No match. But the analyst attached something else. A recovered access log from the museum database. The gray-haired man had used a credential tied to an identity that had been dead for 9 years. Adrian stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he scrolled farther. One line near the bottom had been highlighted in red. The same credential had accessed my employee profile 8 months before Prague. Adrian looked up at me. He didn't meet you by accident. The room felt suddenly too quiet. Then he already knew who I was. Adrian nodded once. Before tonight. Before me. Before any of this. The danger around me stopped feeling like something Adrian had brought into my life. It felt like something that had been waiting there long before he arrived. Adrian's team found the dead man's credential in 3 more systems before midnight, and everyone touched my work without ever touching Adrian's. A customs archive, a private collection registry, a port storage authorization. I recognized every system because I had used them for ordinary shipments. Adrian recognized something else. He spread the recovered logs across the dining table by date instead of location. These aren't random access points. They form a sequence. I leaned over the tablet beside him. A sequence of what? That's what I'm trying to determine. You say that a lot for someone whose job title sounds very expensive. He ignored the remark, but not completely. The corner of his mouth moved before his attention returned to the dates. That tiny reaction should not have mattered. It did, mostly because he had stopped treating my presence like interference. He slid one of the records toward me. Look at the transaction descriptions. The actual work. I did. Different objects, different routes, ceramics, maps, sealed estate crates. Ordinary logistics on the surface. Then I saw what connected them. All 3 were private estate transfers. Adrian's eyes sharpened. The man in Prague asked whether you still handled those. I thought he had the wrong person. He didn't. A secure call lit Adrian's tablet. He answered on speaker this time. Another small change I noticed immediately. A woman introduced herself only as Mara, one of his analysts. We pulled. Your civilian archive, Mercer. There's a problem. 4 years ago, someone requested a background verification on Evan through a contractor used by multiple federal agencies. No sponsor. No investigative purpose. Then the request was deliberately removed from the audit trail. Adrian's expression hardened. From inside, the original metadata says yes. The call ended. This was no longer a stranger using a dead identity to look me up. Someone had reached into systems built to remember everything and taught them to forget me. I stared at the black screen for a moment. So someone checked me through government channels 4 years ago, then erased the fact that they checked me. Yes. And you didn't find that before putting me into your operation. He did not defend himself. No. That answer landed harder than an excuse would have. Adrian Vale had spent 2 days telling me where to stand, when to speak, which doors not to open, because I lacked training. Now the system he trusted enough to classify me as safe had missed something buried in my own history. He pulled out a chair across from me. I need you to stop thinking about what seemed important at the time. That's reassuringly vague. Think about anything unusual from 4 years ago. A shipment, a client, someone who insisted on dealing with you directly. I started searching through memories that had never seemed worth saving. 4 years in logistics meant hundreds of manifests, donors, couriers, and customs delays. Most blurred together. Then one detail surfaced. There was a private estate in Maryland. Adrian waited. He did not interrupt. The owner died. No heirs nearby, so a foundation handled the transfer. Most of the collection was worthless financially. Letters, family photographs, old travel papers. They hired us because a few items were going overseas. Where? London and Geneva. What do you remember about the paperwork? Too much of it. I closed my eyes, trying to reconstruct the office, the dusty folders, the smell of old cardboard. There was one sealed inventory packet I wasn't supposed to open. It came from the estate attorney. Adrian's posture changed. Did you? No, did anyone ask you to? I hesitated. A courier did. He held my gaze. He said the packet had been misfiled and asked me to hand it over before pickup. I refused because his name wasn't on the authorization. What happened? He left. The memory sharpened as I spoke. Then the attorney called an hour later and told me no courier had been sent. Adrian stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. Do you remember the estate name? Harrow, I think. Daniel Harrow. He was already sending the name to Mara. The response took less than a minute. Adrian read it once, then handed me the tablet. Daniel Harrow had officially died in 2019. Retired trade attaché, no intelligence affiliation listed. A partially reconstructed older file told a different story. Same man. Same photograph. Restricted intelligence access. He wasn't just a retired diplomat, I said. No. Adrian scrolled to the estate transfer date. My name appeared in a recovered routing field as the civilian employee who had refused unauthorized release of the sealed packet. 48 hours later came another entry, identity reviewed. No further action recommended. 6 days after that, the record was flagged for removal. I looked up. Someone investigated me because I didn't hand over a package. Maybe. That sounded like a very expensive maybe. Adrian ignored the joke this time. He was staring at the final metadata line. There's more. The removal order had not come from outside the system. It carried an authorization code belonging to an intelligence office that had been dissolved 3 years before Adrian became chief. For the first time since this began, he looked genuinely unsettled. Whoever erased you, he said quietly, had access from inside. And suddenly the question was no longer just why someone had been hunting me. It was why someone inside Adrian's world had once decided I was important enough to investigate, and then important enough to make disappear. By 2 a.m, the Georgetown apartment was no longer safe. Not because anyone had breached it, but because one of Adrian's people had disappeared while trying to verify the old authorization code. Mara's message arrived as a single line on the secure tablet. Kellen missed check-in. No response on secondary channel. Adrian read it once, then stood so quickly the chair legs scraped across the floor. We move now. Because of Kellen? Because he was tracing a code connected to you. And 12 minutes later, he went dark. There was no room for argument in his voice, which meant of course I argued. You said this place wasn't on a standard list. It isn't. Then how does moving help if someone is predicting you? He turned sharply. It helps because staying makes you stationary. That wasn't my point. Evan. No. We already know someone inside your world erased my file. Now one of your people vanishes after touching the same trail, and your answer is to put me in a car again. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he would order me through the door. He picked up the tablet and showed me a map. Mara built us a civilian route 10 minutes ago. No agency vehicles. No government properties. It was the first time he had changed a plan because of something I had said instead of simply working around me. That should have felt like victory. It didn't, because Kellen was still missing. We left through a service stairwell, crossed 2 blocks on foot, and entered a rideshare sedan that looked aggressively ordinary. At the second intersection, Adrian's phone vibrated. Mara's voice came through low. Kellen's badge just pinged at the Federal Triangle garage. Adrian went still. He wasn't assigned there. I know. Pull cameras. A pause. Already tried. The garage feed looped 4 minutes before the badge hit. Adrian's face changed in a way I had begun to recognize. Not fear exactly, but the moment control became calculation. They want us to see the badge, I said. His eyes shifted to me. Yes. So it's bait. Probably. And they know which signal will make you react. His jaw tightened. A block later, Adrian changed vehicles again, taking us through a 24-hour pharmacy and into a delivery van Mara had arranged. No one followed that I could see. Kellen's alive, he said once the doors shut. His emergency biometric just came online. Relief hit fast and ugly. Where? Same garage. Then. You're going. No, I stared at him. You just said he's alive. Which means whoever has him is controlling when we know that. He's your man. And you're the target they're building the trap around. The words came out before he could soften them. Maybe he never intended to. Something in my chest tightened, not because I wanted him to choose Kellen over me, but because I understood the cost of the choice he was making. One of his people was bleeding somewhere, and Adrian was sitting beside me because leaving me unguarded had become the greater risk. I didn't ask for this, I said quietly. I know. That doesn't make it less true. He had no answer ready. The van entered an underground garage beneath an office building. Halfway to the secure elevator, Adrian's earpiece clicked. He stopped. Mara's voice was barely audible, but I caught one phrase. Kellen found. Alive. Adrian closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, relief was already gone. How bad? He asked. Another pause. His hand lowered slowly from his ear. He was left in the garage with no phone, no weapon, and no memory of the last 40 minutes. I felt cold despite the stale heat underground. Drug? Maybe. Did they take anything? Adrian looked at me. Only his access token. The elevator doors opened. What can that token reach? I asked. Movement requests. Temporary locations, route changes, emergency relocations. I understood. So they didn't grab Kellen because he knew about the old code. They grabbed him because he could show them how you move protected people. Adrian's expression went very still. The doors opened into a windowless office suite with 2 agents waiting inside. One brought a medical kit. The other handed Adrian a fresh device and whispered something that made him turn toward me immediately. Sit down. I'm fine. Your hand is bleeding. I looked down and saw a thin red line across my palm where I must have caught it on the service stairwell railing. I hadn't even noticed. Adrian took the kit himself, cleaned the cut, and wrapped it with the same careful concentration he used on surveillance screens. His touch was precise, almost impersonal, except he loosened the bandage when I flinched before I said anything. During cover prep, the only physical skill he had insisted I learn was a basic breakaway from a wrist or arm grip. One turn, one step, enough to create distance. I had complained that civilians should not need homework. You notice everything, I murmured. Not everything. The answer came too quickly. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then I pulled my hand back. Don't make that mean I'm okay with being kept in the dark. His eyes stayed on mine. I know. It was the right answer, which made it worse that I still wasn't sure he believed it. The new device chimed. Mara had reconstructed the stolen token activity. There had been only one successful authorization, a route request submitted 23 minutes before we left Georgetown. Adrian enlarged the timestamp. The destination was not the apartment we had been in. It was the alternate secure location he had originally intended to use if the first site became compromised. The room went quiet. You never sent us there, I said. No, but they expected you to. Adrian stared at the request, then at the sequence of movements we had made since the hotel. The Watchers, the SUV, Kellen, the stolen token. None of it looked like pursuit anymore. It looked like pressure applied at exactly the points where Adrian was most likely to move me. They're not just finding the places you take me, I said. They're testing how you decide where to take me next. Adrian did not disagree. I saw the possibility neither of us wanted to name. Whoever had been looking for me all these years might not have been trying to catch up with Adrian's protection at all. They might have been waiting for him to lead me somewhere they already understood. The mistake in our thinking was hidden in the timing. Mara found it at 3:17 in the morning, buried beneath 6 years of access logs and 2 layers of deleted metadata. Adrian was standing over the conference table when her voice came through the secure speaker. The searches on Mercer didn't increase after he was assigned to you. Adrian stopped moving. I looked from him to the screen. They decreased. They stopped, Mara said. Completely. For 11 months, someone checked Evan's civilian activity every few weeks. Passport renewal, employment records, travel manifests. Then nothing for almost a year. She pushed a timeline onto the display. A clean line of searches ended abruptly, months before Adrian and I ever met. Another marker appeared 3 weeks ago, the day my cover assignment had been approved. 72 hours later, dormant foreign infrastructure began waking up. Old accounts. Dead drop domains. Travel identities that had not moved in years. Adrian leaned closer. They didn't discover him through the assignment. No, Mara said. It looks like they had lost him. The room went silent. Every event from the last 4 days rearranged itself in my head. The hotel watchers. The SUV. Kellen's stolen access token. The fake route request. They had not been adapting to Adrian fast enough to keep up with us. They had been using him to reconstruct something they no longer possessed. You didn't bring danger into my life, I said. Adrian looked at me, and I saw relief flicker for less than a second before I finished. You brought me back onto their map. The relief vanished. Mara sent another file. There's more. We isolated the first dormant signal after the cover approval. It wasn't triggered by Evan's name. A string of numbers appeared beside an image of a customs routing form. I recognized the format immediately. Shipment authorization. From the Harrow estate, Mara said. A dormant identifier attached to one of the sealed transfers was accessed by someone inside Adrian's operation when Evan's background was assembled. Adrian straightened. My people reopened an archival record. For less than 12 seconds. Standard verification. But it was enough. The implication landed before anyone explained it. 4 years ago, I had refused to surrender a sealed packet to a fake courier. Someone investigated me afterward, then erased the record. Later, whoever had been searching for me lost track of me. Adrian's team, trying to make sure I was safe enough to stand beside him, had touched the one buried record that told them where I was again. Adrian turned away from the table. His hands rested on the edge, shoulders rigid beneath his shirt. I put you in their line of sight. He spoke quietly, without defense. I was angry anyway. You didn't know. I should have. That's not the same thing. He turned toward me. The spy chief had no instruction ready, no procedure capable of reducing what had happened into manageable pieces. My job is to know what I'm putting people into. Your job isn't to know everything. People get hurt when I don't. There it was. Not an apology polished for a civilian. Something closer to the truth. Before I could answer, Mara interrupted. I found the original Harrow inventory index. The screen changed again. Most of the estate had been ordinary: letters, photographs, maps, diplomatic gifts. One item was missing from the transfer record. Not stolen, not destroyed. Simply absent from the final inventory. A handwritten archival ledger described it only as a sealed diplomatic recognition packet requiring two-party authentication. Adrian read the line twice. Recognition of what? Unknown. The intelligence copy was scrubbed. Mara enlarged another recovered field. But one authenticator was Harrow. A second field had been corrupted. Only part of the designation remained. Civilian witness. Adrian's eyes moved slowly toward me. You signed the transfer paperwork. I remembered the estate office. The attorney pushing forms across a desk. My signature on receipt pages, customs declarations, chain of custody sheets. Nothing dramatic. Nothing secret. I signed dozens of things. One of them may have registered you as the second verifier without telling you what you were verifying. My stomach turned. Then they want a signature? Not exactly. Mara brought up the protocol notes. This system was designed so the second party couldn't authenticate under obvious coercion. It requires recognition responses tied to the original transfer process. Adrian's expression hardened. They need him conscious and cooperative enough to respond correctly. The pattern finally made sense. The watchers had tracked me rather than shot me. The SUV had pressured our movement without forcing a collision. Kellen had been taken, drugged, and released instead of killed. They were not hunting me because I was Adrian's weakness. They were hunting Adrian because he had become their best route back to me. The balance in the room shifted so completely I could feel it. I was no longer the civilian attached to his operation. His operation was attached to whatever had been buried in my past. Adrian turned the tablet off. We stopped moving you through agency channels. No safe sites, no standard escorts, no digital protection requests. And then, he hesitated. Old Adrian would have answered before I finished asking. Then we find out what that packet unlocks before they can make you unlock it. He looked directly at me. But this time, you're part of every decision. It was not trust yet, but he had finally offered me information before instructions. Mara's voice returned, sharper now. Adrian, one more thing. The dormant network just transmitted again. A new message appeared on the screen. No threat, no demand. Just 4 words attached to an old Harrow identifier. Bring the witness willingly. Adrian stared at it, and I understood what had changed. Keeping me hidden was no longer the objective. We had to learn what they needed me to choose before someone found a way to make that choice for me. By dawn, Adrian had dismantled almost every protection measure he had built around me. My government-issued phone went dark first. Then the secure apartment access, the emergency transport privileges, the tracking beacon in my coat, even the medical profile his team had created in case I was injured undercover. Each system he disabled made me harder for his agency to protect, according to the evidence, harder for the people hunting me to predict. You realize this is the first time I've ever felt safer because the spy chief knows less about where I am, I said. Adrian looked up from the encrypted laptop on the kitchen counter. I still know where you are. That was almost reassuring. It wasn't intended to be. The corner of his mouth shifted. For 10 minutes, the world felt strangely normal. Then Mara sent us the Harrow Estate Attorney's archive calendar, and normal disappeared again. 1. Appointment had been added by hand on the day I signed the transfer documents 4 years earlier. No client name, just a room number and one word: witness. Adrian pulled the estate office floor plan while I reconstructed the room. Small conference room near records. No windows. Terrible coffee. There was an old brass document scanner. The attorney made me confirm sealed pages because the main system was down. How? Signature and a camera. The first scan failed. Mara found enough of Harrow's old verification system to explain the rest. It compared my live response to the original witness record and rejected obvious coercion. I stared at the screen. That explains the message. Bring the witness willingly. The enemy changed tactics once Adrian cut me out of standard channels. At 7:42 that morning, an email appeared in my personal account from a museum director in Boston I had worked with twice. The message was ordinary except for the attachment: a photograph of the Harrow Estate conference room. On the table sat the same sealed packet I remembered from 4 years ago. Beside it was today's date written on a white card. Adrian read the metadata without touching my keyboard. The director didn't send this. I assumed that. Her account was accessed through a hotel network in Zurich 40 minutes ago. So they're showing me they can reach people I know. He met my gaze. Yes. There was no order after that. He waited. It took me a second to realize he was doing it deliberately. You want to know what I think? I do. That's new. I'm adapting. Careful. Someone might revoke your title. The joke earned the smallest breath of amusement, but it vanished when I opened the photograph again. They're not trying to scare me into hiding. They're trying to make staying passive feel dangerous. Adrian nodded. They want you to decide cooperation is the safest option, which means running won't end this. Saying it changed something. Until then, escape had remained the last decision no one could take from me. But the photograph made its cost visible. These people could reach former clients, co-workers, anyone connected closely enough to create pressure. Hiding might protect me by moving the danger onto people who had no idea why it existed. Then we stop asking how to hide me, I said. Adrian's expression tightened. Evan, we find out what the packet opens. That is what they want you to do. No, they want me to do it on their terms. I leaned toward the laptop. You said I'm part of every decision now. Was that true? He held my gaze for several seconds. Yes. Then help me understand the mechanism before they choose the conditions. That was the moment our objective became mine too. An hour later, Mara found a partial transcript from a failed posthumous test of Harrow's recognition protocol. Adrian wanted only the technical summary. I asked for the transcript itself. He hesitated. Some of it may be designed to trigger recognition. That sounds like information affecting me. His jaw worked once. Then he forwarded the whole file. We read the recovered prompts together. Most were procedural. Confirm custody, identify seal, acknowledge transfer. One phrase stopped me cold. State the city where the first exchange failed. I knew the answer before I understood why. Prague. Adrian turned toward me. The man at the reception. He asked about private estate transfers. 8 months after the original paperwork. My memory rearranged itself. That wasn't a random approach. It was a test. Adrian pulled the Prague event records. The dead credential had appeared there, along with a woman I barely remembered from the coat check. Mara found the same woman on older Baltimore footage entering the archive where the duplicate recognition system had been tested. They had not just been tracking me. They had been measuring what I remembered. Adrian closed the image. They've been trying to reconstruct your recognition responses without taking you. And they failed. So far. His voice was low. There was fatigue under it now, the kind he had hidden behind procedure all night. I noticed the untouched coffee beside him and pushed it closer. Drink. One eyebrow lifted. Was that an order? Consider it civilian oversight. He actually smiled, briefly, and obeyed. The ease of the moment made what came next hurt more. Marasene. Final decrypted fragment from the Harrow protocol. Authorization would reveal the location of a dormant diplomatic cache containing identities and access records tied to an old transnational intelligence network. Enough material to destroy careers, expose agents, or rebuild operations thought dead for years. One damaged section also referenced a custody dispute procedure, but Mara could not yet reconstruct when it applied or what it suspended. I looked at Adrian. That's what they want. Yes. He was reading something beneath the fragment. Another recovered note Mara had marked urgent. His face closed before he could stop it. What? Nothing actionable yet. The words were too careful, too familiar. After promising I would be part of every decision, Adrian angled the screen away from me. And I knew, with a certainty colder than fear, that he had just learned something about my role in the Harrow Protocol that he had decided I was not ready to hear. Adrian did not get the chance to explain why he had turned the screen away. My laptop flashed white, the secure connection dropped, and every device in the room went dead at once. A second later, the building's emergency lights came on. Mara's voice vanished mid-sentence. Adrian was already moving when my personal phone, supposedly isolated from every active network, lit up on the counter. One incoming video. No number. No name. I reached for it before he could stop me. The image showed the Boston Museum director from the email, seated in what looked like an empty hotel conference room. She was alive, frightened, and very clearly not alone. A man's hand rested on the back of her chair. Beneath the video, one sentence appeared. Witnesses are easier to persuade when other people pay for their refusal. Adrian took the phone from me, but this time I didn't mistake the movement for protection. Give it back. They've compromised the building network. Give me the phone. Evan, listen to me. No. You listen. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You promised I would be part of every decision. 10 minutes later, you learned something about me and hid it. Now someone I know is tied to a chair because these people think pressure will make me cooperate. You don't get to solve both problems by deciding what I can handle. He went still. The emergency lights painted hard shadows across his face. The note Mara recovered says the witness authentication does more than unlock the cache location. I waited. Adrian's silence stretched just long enough to make the betrayal settle before the information did. It transfers custodial authority, he said, to the surviving witness. My stomach dropped. Me? Yes. So if I authenticate, I don't just reveal where the cache is. I become the legal control point for whatever Harrow protected. That's the most likely interpretation. And you knew that before the video came in. His jaw tightened. For 11 minutes. It should have been a small number. It wasn't. 11 minutes was enough time for him to decide that my own life was information I could be excluded from. The same old wound opened with humiliating precision. People deciding that keeping me safe gave them the right to keep me ignorant. Adrian stepped closer, then stopped himself. I was trying to confirm it before I told you. You were trying to make sure you knew what I should do with it. No, then why turn the screen away? He had no answer that survived the question. The building alarm sounded once, then cut off. A new message appeared on the phone in his hand. 1 hour. An address followed. Not the archive outside Baltimore. A private conference facility near the Potomac. They had changed the terrain again. They want me there, I said. They want you to choose to go there, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. Not to the woman in that chair. Exactly why they picked her. He looked at the address, and I saw the machine in him start rebuilding itself. Routes, teams, options, containment. Watching him do it now made me afraid of him too. Don't. His eyes lifted. Don't what? Don't turn this into another plan where everyone knows what's happening except me. I can't send you into a hostile site with incomplete preparation. And I can't trust preparation that depends on keeping me incomplete. That hit him harder than anger would have. He lowered the phone. You're right. There was no qualification after it. No explanation about operational necessity. He crossed to the dead secure terminal, pulled a physical drive from a locked compartment, and set it on the table between us. This contains everything Mara recovered from Harrow. The authorization notes, the cache records, the damaged custody dispute clause, my internal assessment, and the contingency plan I was building before they cut the network. I stared at the drive. Everything I have. He removed a second object from his coat, a plain black keycard. There's also a clean vehicle in the garage below us. No agency tracker. No assigned driver. The card opens a civilian emergency fund under a false identity they don't know. I understood before he finished. You're giving me a way out. A real one. His voice was quiet now. If you leave through the west stairwell, I won't follow you. I won't activate a team. I won't tag the vehicle. You can disappear before they know whether you chose the meeting. The offer hurt in a way I had not expected. This was what I had wanted from the beginning, the right to make my own decision. Now that he was finally giving it to me, the decision carried someone else's life, a buried intelligence network, and the possibility that walking away would only move the danger outward. And the museum director? My people will still try to recover her. Without me. If that's what you choose. I looked at him. You think I'll leave? I think I no longer have the right to decide that for you. The room stayed quiet for several seconds. Then the phone lit again. The video had changed. The chair was empty now. On the wall behind it, someone had written the Harrow identifier in black marker beside a countdown already running. 57 minutes. Adrian did not reach for my arm. He did not tell me where to stand. He simply pushed the drive toward me and stepped back. There was no order between us now. Only the truth, the exit, and a choice that belonged entirely to me. I took the black keycard, but not the exit Adrian had offered me. I'm going to the meeting. His face tightened, though he did not move to stop me. Then we. Do it your way. No. I picked up the drive with the Harrow files. We do it together, and if you try to pull me out the second this stops looking safe, they'll know I never had a choice. Adrian paused, then checked the countdown on the phone and faced me. Tell me what you need. It was the first plan we built with me inside it from the beginning. 41 minutes later, I walked into the private conference facility near the Potomac alone. Adrian's team was nowhere visible. That was the point. The people inside had spent years studying coercion, movement, compliance, and the ways powerful men tried to protect useful assets. They expected Adrian to hide behind me or drag me away. They did not expect him to trust me enough to stay out of sight. The conference room looked almost identical to the photograph from the Harrow estate. Long table, document scanner, camera lens above the terminal. The Boston Museum director sat against the far wall, wrists bound, but otherwise unharmed. A gray-haired man stood beside the scanner. I knew him before he smiled. Prague. Mr. Mercer, he said. You remembered. You worked very hard to make sure I did. His eyes flicked toward the door behind me. And Chief Vale. Not coming. That surprised him. Only slightly, but enough. He has never struck me as a man who delegates risk. He's learning. The gray-haired man gestured toward the terminal. Authenticate the Harrow record, and she leaves. The museum director looked at me, terrified and trying not to show it. I stepped closer to the scanner. The recognition prompts appeared one at a time. Confirm custody transfer. Identify seal classification. State the city where first verification failed. Prague, I said. A green light appeared. Behind the glass wall to my left, a second man shifted position. Armed. Watching my hands more closely than my face. They still thought the important thing was getting me to complete the sequence. That was their mistake. The next prompt appeared. Accept surviving custodial authority. The gray-haired man's attention sharpened. Proceed. I did not touch the confirmation pad. You spent 4 years looking for me because Harrow made me the surviving control point. Harrow made you a witness. And the witness became custodian when he died. Silence answered me. That was confirmation enough. I placed my palm on the scanner, but did not accept. If I authenticate, the system releases the cache location. Correct. And transfers authority to me. His smile faded. Also correct. Then you don't actually need my cooperation to find the cache. His eyes narrowed. You need my cooperation so the system recognizes anything you do afterward as legitimate. The gray-haired man gave a thin smile. Choice is a luxury, Mr. Mercer. Put someone else in the chair and everyone becomes reasonable. The armed man behind the glass moved again. Finish the sequence. My earpiece remained silent. Adrian had promised not to interfere unless I triggered the contingency we had agreed on. This time, he was keeping that promise. I looked at the museum director. If I finish, she walks out. Immediately. Unharmed. Yes. I pressed accept. The terminal asked for final witness verification. A list of dormant identity records began loading across the screen, but no cache location appeared. The gray-haired man leaned closer. What did you do? Exactly what you taught me 4 years ago. His expression changed. You never taught me to open the packet. You taught me to refuse an unauthorized transfer. The damage clause Mara had recovered had been enough once we knew where to look. I selected the buried option, contested custody. The system froze. Then every loaded identity record locked behind a red authorization banner. The gray-haired man lunged for the terminal. Too late. Contested custody required dual review before any disclosure, and the surviving witness now controlled the appeal. More importantly, activating it transmitted the full session record to 3 independent diplomatic archives outside the compromised network. His face went pale. You've exposed the registry. No, I exposed you trying to steal it. The armed man raised his weapon. That was the contingency. The lights cut out for less than 2 seconds. When they returned, Adrian was already through the side door with 2 agents behind him. The weapon hit the floor before the man could fire. The gray-haired man grabbed my arm, dragging me backward toward the scanner. Adrian stopped 3 yards away. I saw the old instinct in him. The command, the rush, the need to take control. Then he looked at me instead. Evan. Just my name. Nothing else. He was waiting. I turned into the grip the way Adrian had made me practice during cover prep, stepped across the hold, and broke the man's leverage. The grip loosened. I stepped free. Adrian moved only then. Seconds later, the room was secure. The museum director was untied. The terminal remained locked under contested custody. Mara's voice finally came through my earpiece, confirming the external archives had received the hostile session record and the dormant network was already burning identities to contain the damage. The people hunting me had spent years assuming I could be pressured into giving them what they wanted. Adrian had spent days making a softer version of the same mistake. In the end, neither side won by controlling me. Adrian crossed the room slowly. There was blood on his cuff that was not his. Are you hurt? No. He looked like he wanted to check anyway. He didn't. You trusted the signal, I said. I trusted you. We both knew the difference. Outside, sirens approached along the river. Inside, the Harrow system showed one final status line. Custody transfer disputed. Access suspended. The central fight was over. The network had lost control of the cache. The attempt to use me was documented, and the woman they had taken was alive. But when Adrian and I looked at each other across that room, there was still one thing neither of us had decided. The mission had given us a reason to stay together. Now the mission was ending. By noon, the Harrow network was no longer hunting me. The gray-haired handler was in custody. The compromised access chain was frozen, and the attempted transfer could no longer be quietly erased. The museum director was safe. Kellen was awake and already arguing about when he could return to duty. Adrian's people treated all of that like victory. Adrian treated it like paperwork. I found him 6 hours after the Potomac operation in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the river, sleeves rolled up, reading the same final report for the 3rd time. No surveillance feed reflected across the windows. Just the 2 of us. They cleared me, I said. Mara sent the release order. Adrian set the report down. Your cover assignment is terminated effective immediately. There it was. The sentence I had known was coming since the conference room doors closed behind the last arrest. No cover meant no reason for me to sleep in secure apartments, carry government phones, or stand close enough to Adrian Vale that strangers believed we belonged together. That sounds official. It is. You practice saying it. His mouth almost moved. Twice. That made me smile despite myself. Then the room settled again. Adrian reached for a folder on the table and stopped before touching it. There's one more decision. I waited. He opened the folder and turned it toward me. Inside were 3 options for the Harrow cache. Independent diplomatic custody, joint allied review, or continued control under the surviving witness until a permanent arrangement could be negotiated. My name appeared beside the last option. You're asking me, I said. Yes. Not recommending. I have recommendations. Of course you do. Several. Also of course. This time he actually smiled. It was small, tired, and nothing like the controlled expressions he had worn when we first met. But they're yours to hear or ignore. I looked down at the documents. 4 days earlier, Adrian would have chosen the safest option, explained it afterward, and called that protection. Now he had given me the full file before giving me his opinion. The difference was quiet, but unmistakable. Joint review, I said. No single service gets control, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life being the human key to a dead intelligence network. Adrian nodded once. That was my first recommendation. I'm devastated we agree. You'll recover. The decision was recorded before sunset. No ceremony. No dramatic declaration. Just my signature. This time on a document I had read completely, understood completely, and chosen for myself. It mattered more than I expected. Afterward, I handed Adrian the pen. There. One transfer I actually consented to. His expression changed at the word consented, not with guilt exactly, but recognition. I owe you an apology that doesn't involve operational language. That sounds dangerous. I was wrong about you. He did not rush the words. Not because you turned out to be useful. Not because you handled the Harrow system better than I expected. I was wrong because I decided being responsible for your safety gave me authority over your choices. I stayed quiet. He continued anyway. When I got scared, I did it again. Yes. I know. No defense. No explanation about what chiefs had to do or what rules required. The absence of those things made the apology feel real. I leaned back against the table. I don't need you to stop being protective. Adrian looked at me carefully. That sounds like a trap. I need you to stop treating protection like ownership of the decision. He absorbed that without arguing. I can do that. You'll hate it. Almost certainly. Good. For a moment, we were just two exhausted men in a quiet room. The mission gone and nothing left to perform. That was when the uncertainty finally felt real. During the operation, every hour had supplied a reason to stay close. Threat, cover, logistics, fear. Now there was no enemy forcing proximity, no assignment creating excuses, no handler telling us where to sleep. Adrian glanced toward the folder, then back at me. Your agency escort is canceled. Your apartment has been cleared. You can go home tonight. The words were careful. I know. Mara arranged transportation. Also canceled. His eyebrows lifted. You canceled it? I can take a cab, Adrian. I'm aware taxis exist. Progress. He exhaled, almost laughing. Then something more vulnerable entered his face. Evan, I'm trying very hard not to turn this into another instruction. I noticed. So I'm going to ask once. He paused. Would you like to have dinner with me when neither of us is pretending to be anything? The cover finally ended there, not at the release order or the arrests, but with no operational value attached to my answer. Dinner, I said. No secure route. Agreed. No surveillance team. Agreed. No contingency vehicle parked 2 blocks away. Adrian hesitated half a second too long. I stared at him. Which contingency is this? His tired smile finally broke through. The one where I hoped you'd stay. Outside the glass wall, the river reflected the city lights without hiding anything behind them. Adrian wasn't watching me through a camera, a window, or a security feed. He was simply looking at me and waiting for my answer. I picked up my coat, then asked me where I want to go.